Hello, welcome to another video of, well, just me talking about Lorcana. But I've got two friends on this time, and we've got Dave, Attack for Two, and we've got Bumi, who's famous for Bumi Steel Song. And they are kind of known online as the Two Scrooges. I don't know if you ever go to events and people call you the Two Scrooges at all, or anything like that.
One event
Uh,
since we
it's,
started the podcast.
No.
it's happened to me once or twice, mostly because our local area is quite tight knit and they know about it. But for the most part, I'm still Attack for Two or Dave.
Yeah, and I think as well, like, I know a lot of people who watch videos are old school pixel-born grinders, and like, your two names were always around during those times as well. But yeah, you're welcome. We're here to talk about sort of Amber Steel and sort of the way that the meta's going with it being this, especially the aggro version being so dominating, and like just sort of opinions on it because both of you played in the 10K Inc event. And I think you made some interesting deck choices, which I'll link in the description below. But Dave, do you want to introduce yourself first?
Sure. I'm Dave, Attack for Two. Been playing Lorcana since day one. Started on Pixelborn. Eventually, switched over to in real life when it went away and DLC season rolled around. I played in three. Never made day two, but was always close. Had that the last round situation happen, but unfortunately, I was always the loser of the first game. But hopefully, excited for season two, excited for Worlds. Still love playing Lorcana, play it as often as I can. Love talking about it.
Yeah, I think Color called you the most unluckiest player in Lorcana right now because you'd always made
Not
almost day two.
Yeah, not the most unlucky. Surely there are I'm very fortunate, even in Lorcana,
Mm.
but certainly have the strangest runs of of
Mm.
anybody. And a lot of people sit down and they play against red purple and blue steel and amber steel and stuff like that, and it's usually not me. I'm usually running into Mufasas or blue greens
I
or
remember you played a mono purple
Yeah.
in Seattle.
yeah,
It's just
and
mad. But yeah,
and,
Boomy,
and and
so,
split with them and split with
and
them.
you split with it. I can imagine that's a split, and at that point as well, like majority of decks like were just really strong purple cards, and then like a couple red
Yeah.
cards or a couple green cards. So yeah, that makes
Yep.
sense. Yeah, Boomy, do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Yeah, I'm Boomy Jr. I co-host Two Scrooges podcast with Dave. I also like Dave. I started playing Lorcano on day one. I got a box of the first chapter, and that was the only product that I had for a long time. And then also like Dave, I managed to play in three DLCs last year, but things broke a little better for me. I made day two of all three of them. I ended up qualifying for North American Continentals, and I finished in the top 32 of that event.
Yeah.
And for every event except for one that I've played in, I have registered Amber Steel.
Yes, yeah, and that's sort of the talking point of this interview is you both played in the 10K, which Kurt ended up winning with Amber
Yep.
Steel, like sort of classic diggy hole. And yeah, you both sort of brought Amber Steel lists, which for Boomy, you're kind of known for playing Steel Song, even with the nickname Boomy Song. I don't even know if that's just for our SLTC group or like people outside of that call it Boomy Steel Song. I think I've seen it in 20 lore a few times.
Yep. Yeah, a couple times in 20 lore, I think it comes up as that, just an affectionate name for a Steel Song list without Ariel in it.
Mm. Which no, I did see the list you were running though. You did go for a whole new world build, didn't you? In the end,
Right.
yeah,
Yep. Yeah, all of the numbers that I played were kind of bad. I played three A Whole New World, three Ariel, three Naveen, three Daisy, three Piglet, three Along Came Zeus. I just had a bunch of cards that I wanted to fit in, and I just ripped cards out until it was 60 cards.
mm. Did you feel that was the most optimal, or looking back on it?
Oh, no, I think if I were to play the same kind of build again, I really um since set five, I've really liked playing an aggressive style Amber Steel deck with a whole new world because you get to dump a lot of lore on the board and then you draw seven and refill, and you are constantly able to apply pressure. Um, and I knew going into this event that Rhino was going to be extremely popular. Possibly the best answer to Rhino in the game right now is Along Came Zeus,
Mm.
which Rhino just happens to be able to sing on turn two. So it kind of led to this point where I knew I wanted Along Came Zeus, and playing Along Came Zeus means playing a character with Singer 4, and then character with Singer 4 wants other things to do, so maybe a couple other songs, and then a high song density means Ariel. But I also still wanted to play this or have this option for Daisy Piglet, Piglet Daisy opens,
Mm.
so I could get under the control decks. Um, so I ended up with a deck with 18 unique cards, with a lot of 2 and 3 O's.
Yeah, it is interesting to build because right now when I've been on aggro Steel Song, you play into like a controlled traditional Steel Song, and as you say, if they play Troubadour turn 2, and you've gone fully in on
Yep.
shifting Rhino, you kind of feel very set back. And then if they get an aerial set up,
Right.
and then they can wheel you, and they've got like 2 or 3 singers set up, so they'll always find more removal. Yeah, it's been fairly hard to build, I think, right now.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And Dave, sort of, I've always known you as like Ruby Amethyst. I think the first time I remember seeing your name pop up and talking about you was a discussion in like set 3 about running the 3-drop Maleficent, because you'd made a top cut in like one of the Thea Beastie events. And like at the time, I think it was like not played, and I can't remember. I think it was Surface Mini, wasn't it, that was being played instead? And
Yeah, my little carve out in the Lorcana Ruby Amethyst community was advocating against playing Surfer Mini in set 3 and playing Maleficent instead. So I played almost exclusively Amethyst decks forever until last weekend at the Ink Invitational.
hmm,
I was playing a lot of green purple. I had almost 200 games of green purple leading into the event. But there's kind of 3 unique builds of the deck. There's like the Diablo discard package. There's the tempo versions that Artabax is kind of known for with Merfolks and Flynn's, and then there's another kind of amalgamation of the two that's the Diablo package and the lever packages, but you're not playing Prince John in the discard. And the issue that I had leading into the event was I couldn't figure out which of the 3 was better or best, or even if there was a difference between them, if it was just came down to personal preference. And then I would say Wednesday leading up to the event, the Vinny Amber Steel aggro deck kind of just took hold of our friend group,
Yeah.
uh, and uh, almost everybody that picked it up had incredible success with it, including myself. I went on a 12 match bender on Friday night with the Vinny aggro deck and won all 10 or 10 or 12 or however many I played. And I was like, at that point, I was like, I could sweat over which version of green purple to play, or I could just play this 60 cards that seems almost perfect, and it was just it was just gifted to
hmm.
me. I was kind of a bystander watching the experts, Sky and Primor and a few other of the Amber Steel players chatting about it, making lists together, and I was like, well, if I have access to this and it's as good as we think it is, I should just play it.
Hmm.
That's what I did.
Yeah, no, you make an interesting point about the Emerald Amethyst, because it's that kind of deck that I've looked at is when they figure out which of the 3 or which hybrid would actually work. It could be quite a dominating deck, but it seems the more we get in, there's too much going on for them. You can't be a tempo discard deck, and sometimes wrong lever is the incorrect card to be playing at the time. It seems like you could build it to beat one thing, but then it would lose hard to something else.
Yep,
Um,
that's exactly the problem I ran into.
yeah, I've seen a lot say that. Like, you can make it so it beats all your Ruby Sapphire matchups, or you can make it so it beats all of your Amber Steel matchups, but you can't seem to have a good matchup spread. Whereas, like, the Amber Steel aggro, the Rhino version with the Vinny, there isn't a matchup that I really dislike with that deck. And we've been both playing the Primal one as well, which is where I started with it. But yeah, it's like even in your baddest matchups, you can just do a full. All right, I'm just going to turn everything sideways and get to 20 before you anyway.
I think the only matchup I really don't like is just against classic Steel Song.
Mhm.
The ones that are playing Singer 4s and Aerials and Naveen's, maybe the Robin Hood package. For sure, they're going to have 4 Along Came Zeus in the deck. And you're just not fast enough. And the Let the Swarm Ray Jones in their deck are much better than the Let the Storm Rage On's in your deck, right? Because we're playing piglets and pennies and all these 1-drops in there. They're playing, 1/3s with resist, or 1/4s or 2/3s, so they're surviving the removal spells that we put in our deck, right? And on vice versa, we're eating everything, and their rhinos are better too, right? Because their rhinos are singing Zeus on your rhinos, where your rhinos have to battle theirs to get them off the table, and like that's not a winning proposition.
Yeah, the only thing that Let the Storm Rage On is getting out of traditional Steel Song is their 1-drops, which is really only a bad trade if you play your 1-drop into their turn 1 Cinderella. Other than that, you don't care that much. Whereas with the aggro deck, we're getting the piglets, the pennies, the ladies, all and then all of the 1-drops that aren't Daisy.
Yeah, the issue I've seen a lot of people saying is, "Oh, I'm losing traditional Steel Song. Can I just add Zeus in the list?" And no, I don't really think dock decks that run Zeus do particularly that well. And then it's the same point that Boom made when he went to the Wheel Steel Song with Ariel, because then I have to put 4-cost singers in there, so Troubadour or Ursula has to be an option. And then at that point, why am I not just building Steel Song? Because I've got this in between of it, which could probably work sometimes, but overall I'm not doing a consistent game plan. Whereas Amber Steel aggro, sometimes they'll Troubadour on 2, but they miss their Zeus or they miss their strength or whatever, and you just aggro and win anyway because your deck still has a consistent game plan. But I think the question I have actually for Boomy is like, so going into like blind mulligans at this event, did you just look for answers to Amber Steel aggro? Or because I imagine if you do Troubadour on 2 and they are Ruby Sapphire Shark, you could be in a rough spot.
So the blind mulligan on the draw is always the hardest, and I think that's probably true for any deck. I think I don't think I ever really specifically mulliganed for Amber Steel aggro, which is fortunate because I never played against it the whole event. But I want to keep my general plan on the draw is to try to keep sticky threats. So even if I know I'm not going to quest with Daisy on my second turn, I like keeping her as a turn 1, especially blind, because if they play Cinderella, I can play Daisy and I can start establishing a board. Or if you have an idea that you're against another aggro deck, keeping a Rhino shift is really powerful, because they really can't they really can't like quest with a character turn 2 into a baby Rhino, because he's just gonna come in and crunch whatever they quest with. So typically I try to keep like maybe like Cinderella, Smee, Lawrence, maybe one or two songs depending on which songs they were, and then just ink or curve filler and just kind of see how it goes. Right? I always keep Pete on the draw. Yep.
Yeah, it's interesting swapping from Sapphire Steel to this, where I guess with like Sapphire decks, you do quite an aggressive mulligan, because if you don't get the ramp on X turn, you need ramp, turn 2 or turn 3, you sort of just lose the game. But with Amber Steel, I find you can get yourself into positions where this hand looks playable. I'll probably just do a keep, or maybe I'll send back a couple of inkables. Like that has actually been quite a big learning curve for me, I think. Learning just way too much Sapphire has sort of put me back. And especially with Kiwi, where it was just, I need characters that go 1, 2, 3, 4. Whereas this deck, you can do 1, 2, 2, or 1, 2. I need something for Lady. I need a song. I need the dock as well. Right, yeah. And it can also and even in the Holy World version, it's that I can't get my head around the traditional Steel Song mulligan at all.
Yeah, it's the most difficult mulligan in the game, in my opinion. Steel Song, when they have it and do their thing, it seems like anybody could play it. When they like Cindy, Let the Storm Rage On, Vanessa, Along Came Zeus, your thing. Next turn, play Ariel, get strength, banish your next thing, sing a whole new world, do it all over again. And it's like, but like getting there is actually kind of tricky, because the deck is kind of loaded up with a bunch of clunky, high cost, uninkable songs that you can get stuck with.
Yeah, or sometimes if you play against an Emerald deck and you keep songs on the draw in the dark, your hand will just get ripped apart by Ursula 2, and then you kind
Mm.
of flounder around until you're dead. So, sometimes I know some Steel Song players advocate for just like sending all of your songs back on the draw. But so I like to keep, if I have a Cinderella especially, I'll always keep like at least one Let the Storm Rage On or Raging Fire on the draw, because if they aren't an Ursula deck, the amount of tempo that one of those cards is going to get you is extremely high. It's like worth the risk that your opponent is an Emerald deck. But yeah, if you open the nuts and you get to do your thing unbothered,
Yeah.
you just win. You just win a lot.
I got 2-0 today on the sim that we don't name. And it's just they open Cinderella, Troubadour, Ariel finds Zeus, take everything out. And, they just did that 2 games in a row. And you just think, if it's that easy, I'll play it. The next game, same deck, different player, completely off curve. It was an easy 2-0 for me. But yeah, it's... And I remember even our friend UK Bumi, or Stefan, he's completely dropped Steel Song because I watched his games. He got 0-2'd. The next game, I think it was miss a character till 3, play Ariel, find no song, get up from the table, and not play again. And now he's on Blurple or something like that.
Yeah, there are some frustrating things. Yeah,
Mm.
Blurple's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess
Ariel is such a. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, please no. Please talk about
Oh
Ariel.
yeah, I was gonna say. So, this past weekend, the Inking 10K was the first time that I registered Ariel, because every time that I would put her on my deck and test with her, she would miss all the time. Even if I had 16, 17 songs, it's just like one miss at a key moment, you lose the game on the spot, and that's just not what I'd want to do. I'd rather just, I don't know, not draw a card, and not draw what I need naturally, and not have a scapegoat for all of my errors. But I got a little my aerials, I think my aerials hit a little more than 50% all the time over the weekend, so that felt pretty good. And sometimes she misses, but you just need her to stick for a turn to sing a whole new world and you're fine.
Yeah. When I've played it, it's sort of sometimes you're holding off to when I sing Whole New World, I win this game. But it has been 2 turns now, and I haven't drawn it yet.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess the other interesting point is sort of mentioning that Rhino, like the thing that really beats him is Troubadour singing Zeus, or just anything really singing Zeus. I think you could even hold up to the aerial. But do you think any other decks have a way to sort of beat this? I mean, if you could get a Chernobog or something to buff with a crab, like I've seen the purple steel decks that have got like 4 crab, 4 Jafar crabs, and that new Yelena card, and I've played against them, and I don't think they're the answer, but they're at least trying something.
My latest infatuation has been with the shift, the 5-cost Amethyst Bell. I don't know the name of that card.
Mystic Bell, isn't it?
Accomplished Mystic.
Accomplished Mystic. Yeah, I just like taking 3 damage counters from my, Elsa and putting them directly onto the Rhino and banishing it that way.
Yeah. I've been practicing over Fumbles, of course, because we're all playing the same group, and yeah, it's like he's not even playing around my Rapunzel traps, but I'm having to play around his Bell Mystic traps, and count all the damage, and it's like, please pop heal that, because I just don't want you to have more damage on that. I found Blurple, again, I feel like they have to play quite optimally. Like they kind of need to get the Bell down, they need to get the Genie, they need to just basically progress a board every turn.
Yeah, the turn 1 Bell, turn 2 ramp, into Genie really is hard to beat for any of the Ember Steel aggro decks. I think the classic Steel Song versions are probably still okay into that, but if you're on the dock aggro piles, that curve is very, very hard to beat. You almost can't turn anything sideways.
No.
Yeah. And then Elsa will do it for you.
And then Elsa will do it for you.
Yeah, it's gambling they don't have an Elsa for your Piglet, because next turn you can put a penny or something, or put a bodyguard down, or whatever you can try. Yeah, I've also found green still on the draw can be fairly tricky if you don't get the Pete at the right time. You know, if
Right.
they can establish an Ursula and get it to sing, you're gonna just lose on the spot.
Yeah, my experience playing against Ray in the Amber Steel aggro versus Green Steel is whether or not you can answer the first either Diablo or Ursula, the Ursula 3-drop. If they shift Diablo and you instantly have the Cindy with the Let the Storm Rage on in hand because they didn't have the Ursula 2 or whatever, or because you had two songs. I recently have been keeping 2 removal spells in my opening hand against green deck so that they grab one and I still have the answer. If you can do that, you're in an okay spot and you can aggro them out fairly well. But if they Ursula Deceiver of all play muses, sing 2 songs, bounce 2 characters, the game's just over on the spot.
It's extremely difficult to fight back through muses.
Yeah, muses is so good.
It's never turning sideways, and any sudden chill or anything. Also, yeah, I found green steel and very competent amethyst players who are getting a good curve is like the hardest task for Amber Steel aggro right now.
Yeah. Rhino's made the format quite interesting, particularly on the amethyst sides, because like Fox isn't very. Fox was always the cruncher of aggressive stuff, but now Rhino survives through it, and now Rhino has kind of took over that mantle as the big bad anti-aggro smusher of tiny characters card.
Yeah. Affectionately called the Crunch Master by our friend Justin, which I think is a very appropriate name for him. It's just this fluffy little hamster in an indestructible hamster ball, just running things over.
Yeah.
At least with Fox, like if you knew you were going to get Foxed, you could set it up so you could let the storm rage on the crackback, and then you don't lose too much board presence or card economy. But with Rhino, he smashes your thing, and then you can't let the storm rage on him, and you can't Strength of a Raging Fire him because he's a 4/3 with resist 2. And you're probably only going to have maximum 4 characters. But I think
comes out one turn earlier if you shift.
And he comes out a turn earlier. Is just a very good card. I think there are answers to him. I think a lot of colors kind of have answers to him. A bunch of evasives questing in the face of Rhino, makes him look a little silly. Crab onto any 2 strength character will clear a Rhino, which is a big boon. The Challenger 2 characters are a little worse because they have to buff a 3 strength character, and that's a little harder to do. But there are tons and tons of 2 strength characters that can trade with Rhino if you crab it.
I think a lot of the time
generally
you're looking to not get 2 for 1 by Rhino really as well, aren't you? Because sometimes when you go, I have a Pete and a Smee, or I have 2-3 strengths. I can get rid of this Rhino, but you probably just lose the game because they go, cool, double Daisy, and I'll just keep questing, and your board went too smaller as well. The most interesting one I've seen so far is Mosquito Bite, which I thought was quite good because it just pops the shield, and then you can do whatever to remove it. But I feel like that's someone who's had a real big frustration with Rhino. I'll just play Mosquito Bite because I can't answer it.
Yeah. Even then though, if your plan is to Mosquito Bite and then challenge Rhino, at best you're still getting a 2 for 2.
Yeah.
And at worst you're 2 for 1ing yourself because they just played him for 4 ink instead of shifted him.
He in a sense is a 4/5 by turn 2, which is just insane stats. You mentioned Justin as well, who's of course a friend of the channel, the father of Kiwi, and he was on his Sapphire Steel ally deck, which I think it looks really good fun, and I think it has like really good matchup spread. I'm assuming he was playing Cogsworth, but I did say to Dave before we started recording this, I wouldn't mind his opinions on Cogsworth because as I've tested with him and I know he's never been that high on the card, I wouldn't mind why you've always rated it quite low down.
So I'm for sure Cogsworth's biggest hater. and mostly I think that stems from having played Ruby Amethyst for as long as I have. Cogsworth obviously was not meant to do anything. You know, was not for this matchup. Um, but in the steel versus steel matchups is where Cogsworth obviously shines, and I don't have a lot of experience in those. You know, playing red blue and Ruby Amethyst. So like my CSUs always loved when Cogsworth came down. But my the haterade pump, you know, turned all the way on last set when Scrooge and Tamatoa got printed, and I just thought people were in a format where we're dropping nuclear bombs on each other and putting
Yeah.
you know dimes and dimes into play for free. We're picking up our pump, you know, we're
Mm.
drawing stuff for free. All I ever wanted my opponent to do was to you know exert 5 ink and put a 2/5 with no text. I was like, I'm never challenging. Like I'm just
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
I'll put a dime into play and diming my Tamatoa for 9 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's just, uh,
Yeah. I
Yeah.
remember when that time was sort of happening when before the ban, and it was like a lot of people come over and that right. We cut Tinkerbell, we cut Cogsworth, we cut basically staples that have been there since like set 2, and I felt like mainly the like Sapphire Steel community just took offense to that. Yeah, but
yeah, the last set was super interesting for Blue Steel. Right, Blue Steel's always been this like fringe tier 1.5 deck that had a really good Ruby Amethyst matchup, and that kind of propped it into play, you know, into a staple in the metagame.
Yeah.
But I don't think it was ever really the best deck throughout the format until set 7 comes along with Scrooge and Tamatoa and Bell, you know, in particular. And suddenly Blue Steel's in my opinion, the de facto, you know, best deck of the format and a tier above itself. I would have put it above Ruby Sapphire as well. And so now the Blue Steel community, which, you know, was this tight knit tier 1.5, you know, community comes along, and now all of the I'm only going to play the best deck players show up,
yeah.
right? And those players have very strong opinions about what's good, what's bad. You know, it's like
they rip out everything sacred.
Yeah, I don't care about the
everything.
prestige of,
Yeah.
yeah. Cogsworth has no prestige to me. I just get that out, you know, get that garbage out of here. And all the Blue Steel players are like, no, he's the staple. You know, it's like I got nothing to do with Cogsworth. I'm just I'm
as a
moving.
long
I'm zooming
time
past it.
as a longtime steel player, you know, with preference for the aggro slant of the steel side of the color, Cogsworth against me, Cogsworth is just like an item.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't rumble. You know, he's never exerting to sing songs because like the blue steel player always really values the resist, and it's just like, all right, I'm gonna continue turning my guys sideways, and your guys will take 1 less damage when they rumble in. And you know, you spent 5 ink on something that doesn't affect or dominate the board, and I'm happy to just keep going sideways with my steel cards.
Yeah,
that's fine.
Yeah, and I think there are a lot of those like challenges to the Sapphire Steel deck were healthy, because the one that Dave and Justin had by the end of the set, well, by the end of the ban, I think was probably like the most optimal way to build it. And you could put a few tweaks here and there. And I kind of noticed with Amber Steel, as I've jumped over there, like a lot are on this deck, and quite a few just instantly cut Rapunzel. And then even some people like Wochuk who cut it down to like 1 in the aggro deck. And if I go into 20 lore or places like that, there are no, you don't cut Rapunzel. Even when she's a bad card, she's a good card. And I can understand that, but I've always felt like, yeah, someone jumping from a dedicated deck to another one kind of can push it a bit more, just because they have no sacred bond to Rapunzel being in the deck.
Yeah. And one of the things I was talking to our friend Lizard Kitty when the new lady, the Amber only lady was revealed. You know, I messaged her. I was like, "Are you brave enough to play an Amber deck without any Rapunzels in it? Because we're not inking past 3. We're going to 3, and we're going wide, and we're never ever inking past 3. So throw your Rapunzels away." And then I played four Rapunzels in my deck at the ink event.
Yeah, you want to tell your story about inking your Rapunzels? What goes through your head when you look at your opponent?
So
I don't know.
uh
Maybe you'd have
I
to
was
edit this
watching,
out. I
yeah,
don't know.
I was watching the ICL, and Wonderland was talking about how if you ink Rapunzel, it kind of tells your opponent maybe you have another Rapunzel, because what are you doing inking a card that powerful? And one thing that I have found is that when I'm inking Rapunzel, it's because I think my opponent doesn't look like an idiot. Because like if your person, I don't know how to explain it, like if you are just gonna leave yourself open to Rapunzel traps, like I don't know, there's
It's sort of that thought of
something about people, like something about the way people play the early game that you're like, yeah, I can probably get this person with
Yeah, I
yeah.
Rapunzel.
when I when I was testing and then playing in Ink, I played a few Amber mirror matches, and I didn't even have Rapunzel in my deck. But one thing I did almost all the time was like if I had a Cinderella in play and my opponent had like a crab and I had a 1/4 like a daisy, I'm turning that Cinderella. I gotta just check,
Mm.
if my opponent's gonna rumble back, right into a potential rumble. It's worth it to get the one lore and
Mm.
Yeah.
to banish your own Cinderella to get the information on whether or not your opponent's gonna fall for a Rapunzel trap in the remainder of the three matches, three games you're gonna
Mm,
play with them.
I love it as well. Like
yeah.
when I've been learning this a bit more, I find it easier to play without Rapunzel because, as you say, you can sometimes hold on and go, "No, I've got to get this Rapunzel value or I lose," and you've already lost the game because you've been sat there trying to get them
Yeah.
to
Yep.
leave open some Rapunzel value for you, like a Smee exerted for your Daisy, and
Yeah.
the game's gone on for so long, and is making that decision of do I just ink this or do I just slam it on the board. And like
Right. Yeah.
it's actually quite a complex card and like how to use it, and sometimes inking it just puts fear into them as well, as you said.
Yeah,
Right.
you can
Yeah.
you can definitely tell the opponents that are death gripping that Rapunzel to draw 3,
Yeah.
Hmm.
and we'll go through any length to do it instead of just making the right play and inking it and moving it past
Mm.
moving past that point in the game.
Yeah, I mean, all three of us, I'm sure, have been there where it's like, okay, I just need this Rapunzel to draw 3 cards,
Yeah.
and then
Yep.
I'm off to the races, and then and then your opponent like exerts their 3 strength thing, and like your face lights up, and on the inside, like your face lights up, you're like, yes, yes, and then they snake it back. It's like, oh, man, and then you're like, okay, surely it's not going to happen again, and then they exert their snake, and like you go through all these emotions again, like, yes, I'm going to get my 3 cards this time,
Mm.
and then they fox their snake back. It's like, no, and then you've wasted, like, I don't know, a couple cards inked that you should have been playing, and you've done nothing because you've been hoping to get
Yeah.
cards out of Rapunzel, and then the game's just over.
The most
And that, I mean, but that's, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say the most extremes of that I've seen is sort of they're sat there trying to get their Rapunzel value and they'll draw a dock. And they think, no, Rapunzel's 3. And then they'll draw a second dock. And you think at that point, you've really just screwed the game up that you could have went dock into dock.
Right. Yeah.
Or just sat there or like keep drawing whole new worlds, and now you've drawn 2 whole new
Yeah.
worlds and you're still trying to get this
Yep.
Rapunzel heal when you could have set up
Yeah.
some singers, you could have went a different direction with this.
I mean, that's something, some games you need to recognize. You need to be able to recognize very early on if there is a feasible route for you to get 2 cards out of Rapunzel.
Mm.
And if there's not, and you can establish that just getting 1 card is good enough, you can hold her and you can use her to heal 1 off of Smee. Because like
Yep.
nobody ever leaves a 2 damage Smee sitting around.
Mm.
But if you don't have a reasonable avenue to getting cards out of Rapunzel, like you just have to hope they misplay into it. You just got to throw her in the inkwell.
Mm. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, for sure. I've noticed with the testing that I've done because I've gone with Primal's list and just throwing a couple Rapunzels in there. I don't know if it became like wide knowledge that maybe a lot of these decks are cutting Rapunzel, and you're like, well, I'd have to completely forget about that little dance we do, which a lot of decks could benefit from. So just having the ability to ink 1 or 2 and maybe getting to use 1 at some point. That's why I believe Wojciech put 1 in there. So at least
Yeah.
during Swiss, he could be like, I guess even in Top Cut when they deck check you, it's like, well, it's never unclear if I don't have that 1-off Rapunzel in hand. You can play around it if you
Yeah.
want. Yeah,
My updated version has a single Rapunzel in it.
yeah. I think that might be the correct way to go, and it's a similar way, I guess, that Steelsong puts those big Cinderellas and things like that in there. Of you might see me ink it, but how many do I have? Will I play another one later on? Keeping that fear up. Yeah, so I think there's one card as well I want to talk before we start wrapping things up, because we have had a nice long chat. Is Beyond the Horizon. Of course, that was supposed to be the dominating card for Amber and Emerald Steel. But to be honest with you, besides an Emerald Steel, I haven't really seen it in Amber. Or do you think that's just a post-rotation card?
I was actually testing a list that I called Hawaiian Rhino Coaster Ride, which was very similar to traditional Steel Song, except it played Beyond the Horizon instead of a Whole New World, and the deck felt fine. I kind of started with this all-in plan on singing Beyond the Horizon as early as possible with 4 Cinderella and then 8 Singer 4s, 4 Ariels, 4 Rhinos. So you have a lot of options to sing early Beyond the Horizons, which can be very devastating in certain matchups. Like if you get them and you to refill your hand. I think there's something there. I think I just didn't really have time to test it and get the numbers to where I wanted. So I kind of defaulted more to a comfort pick. But being able to play out your hand, use your hyper efficient removal to clear their things, and then not refilling them up to 7, and only having a draw 3 for yourself, I think it could be extremely strong.
Yeah.
So that is what I would explore. I would explore next if I had another event to test for.
Yeah.
I know a few people are going to bring Beyond the Horizon Ember Steel to events this weekend.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah. It seems with like Emerald Steel, you get a lot more out of it if you were to say get the Prince John and the Muses to sing it.
Yeah, I think it's in the same vein that like classic Steel Song is a rough matchup for the Ember Steel aggro decks. I think just going a little bit, you always want to be in like a mirror match. You always want to be the person that's going a little bit bigger than the other one, right? So when you trade off all your resources, your opponent has daisies and 1-cost rhinos and pennies in their deck, whereas you have the beast or aerial sonic warrior or something like that. So after everybody trades off the resources that are the same, they're left with little stuff and you're left with big stuff, and eventually more times than not you'll win that match. And so that I know a lot of people are doing that because shifting aerial is a little surprise +1 on the singer count. And I know some people that are going to playing the big Cindy too. She does it all by herself, right? You just
I'm always surprised with the Sonic Warrior Aerial, because whenever I read it, I go, yeah, that deck should beat so many decks in the meta. But whenever it's played against me or I see it actually played, I don't know, the 2 ink cost seems expensive. Sometimes you don't want to sing certain songs. It just never really seems to work out in a good way for the way I've seen it.
It's a bit more disruptible than regular Whole New World Steel Song, because you could mess up like the Steel Song players' entire early game, and then they could just Naveen Whole New World you, and then it's like you didn't disrupt them at all. They can't really do that with Beyond the Horizon. So if you can keep if you can keep a singer off the board, if you can keep them kind of on the back foot where they need to use their characters to actually sing the removal spells, then they don't really have time to sing Beyond the Horizon. Whereas with a Whole New World, it's only ever going to be one character exerting, where with Beyond the Horizon, it's almost always going to be at least 2.
Yeah.
So I think there's something there with it. I think there's something there that's going to be very good in Amber Steel, but I think people just need to get kind of the numbers and play patterns right.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things that I think has gone wrong with Sonic Warrior in the past, particularly in a Whole New World versions of Ember Steel, is that both players are playing a resource-rich game when you're giving both players a fresh set of 7 cards. And like Ariel really, I think, dominates games when both players are lower on resources, and your one song is taking out 2 things, and they're not just flooding the board again on the next turn because you gave them 7 fresh ones.
Right.
And so I think in a Beyond the Horizon style deck, I like Sonic Warrior a lot. I think she's going to prove to be quite good, especially when people are playing Smees and Pennies and Piglets and little
Yeah.
stuff like that. And she's
Mm.
pretty
Yeah.
good against Rhino too. I mean, she'll.
I mean, she could pop it for the cost of 2, and then you could maybe sing the song onto it, whatever you wanted to. Pop it, pay
Yeah,
the
but
2.
she's also like the only card outside of Robin Hood that will Rapunzel trap into
Yeah.
A Rhino.
into
Yeah.
a Rhino.
She's a very disgusting Rapunzel. it's
Yeah,
pretty
and
much
she's
always
really hard to get. And like she also came the set after Medusa showed up.
Yeah.
And so she was
Mhm.
kind of dead on arrival because Medusa was like one of the most played red cards, and the Medusas are at an all-time low right now.
Right.
And so it's ripe for her to come back. But you need a lot of, like the other cost is you need a lot of songs. So if you're playing, say, 18 songs with like the 12 removal spells for Beyond the Horizon and the 2 more Bare
Mm.
Necessities or World's Greatest Criminal Mind or whatever.
Mhm.
I think that's a good environment for her.
Yeah. I think actually the last part I was going to say, then we'll do one more thing before we wrap up, is I don't know if either you're playing this weekend or if you were playing this weekend, what would be the deck you bring this time around, say to like a 10k or something that was quite big as well? Would you stick with the same list?
I would
first.
not.
You would not.
I would be playing Green Steel.
You'd be going, okay.
I think I think the lack of Beyond the Horizon has allowed all of the red decks to come back into the format. When Beyond the Horizon was spoiled and we were playing like red purple versus green steel, it was as Anne would say, your opponent need to have a heart attack for you to win the match.
Yeah.
The matchup felt that bad, and all of the Beyond the Horizon Muses decks have like basically run away. And Muses is also just like when the Sisu counts are way down, the Muses count. People haven't, at least in my opinion, haven't adjusted to a world where Sisu's not 1/3 of the matchups that you're going to play against.
Right.
And so a lot of people have fear of putting the Muses or even Cogsworth into play because Sisu used to sweep them all up, but they're not nearly as prevalent. The most common red blue decks these days are DKPs, and he's maybe running 2. I think it was a 2-2 split with Hades the last time I checked
Yeah.
his
That sounds
Metafy
about right.
list. And so with the Sisu's down, I think the Muses can come back, and Prince John, the Muses, and Beyond the Horizon, they're just best friends.
Absolutely.
So that's what I would be doing.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. I looked at Green Steel as well, but I just really liked playing Lady, so I stuck with still aggro. Boomy, what would you go for? I assume the same, maybe some tweaks.
Yeah, I'd probably iterate on the same thing that I played at the Ink event. I had 2 ladies in my deck then. I would probably bump it up to 4. I'd find cuts for that. I might switch over to a Beyond the Horizons instead of Whole New World, just as a way to not be refilling my opponent, but still also having some card draw. And then you still get to play Along Came Zeus. You still get to play Ariel, which I think is good into the other Rhino decks. Being the person who has Along Came Zeus in a Rhino mirror match is going to go a long way for you. You have a clean answer to their Rhinos. They don't have a clean answer to yours. So I'd play something very similar, just maybe a few tweaks. I might end up on a whole new world still. So
yeah. I find with Lady, like, that is the card I really enjoyed the most of the set, and it was a card I didn't like at the start of the set, because I think I was playing so much Green Steel, and I was like, cool, you just double Singlet the Storm and kill their Piglet as well, and move on with your life. But into like everything else, like I found like the Ruby Sapphire DKP list, like on the play, you just lock that game in as a win with aggro. But when I used to play the Diggy Hole in set 6, like on the draw, if they played it correctly and they just mega ramped to Sisu, it was fairly hard to get the win. You had to open like triple Daisy into like some Peats and constantly getting the pressure. But with Lady being, she like locks wins on the play into some decks. Against Blurple, say they missed their bell, and you've gone, Piglet, Lady Piglet, or something nuts like that. Like, it doesn't matter. They'll start removing things, but you've got enough lore. But on the draw as well, it gives you that swing. If your turn 1 is a Daisy or whatever, your turn 2 is something that quests for more than one, and then your turn 3 is also going to like 4 lore, or like I say, if you get Piglet off it, you're getting 5 lore off it. It's just enough to swing you, and I've never felt more confident to that DKP list. And I don't know about in America, but especially here, there are still people who are just living and dying by Ruby Sapphire. I just feel like they invested too much money in like Sisu or Sharks or something, and that's why they're like still on it when it's really not the best call for an event half the time.
Yeah, Bumi
Yeah.
said on our podcast that it was because you guys have dignity over in Europe and you won't register green steel.
To be fair, we have like a few green steel players. I've played it a couple times, but I don't know. Like, I played a green steel. I played a side event at UK Games Expo, and like my round 2 was this like woman who was here. You know, she was just visiting. She was just looking at all the board games, and I just felt horrible. You know, she was on red steel, and you know, you
Oh,
play
no.
the little Diablo, and they don't show you your hand instantly. And I go, oh, this card lets me look at your hand, and it's like, oh, it gets worse from here, you know.
Yeah.
And then you shift it, and they
Yeah.
go, oh, that's a good card, and yeah, it's a very good card. And
Yeah.
I can't have that interaction. It feels horrible. I mean, she was sat there drawing 1 card a turn at 4 ink, you know, and I can't just full quest to win because I've only got a couple 3 questers on the board. But the deck is insanely powerful, I think, at a high level. The feeling that you can do sort of mid-range and kind of tackle with all the control decks as well. But I did think I was struggling into Ruby Sapphire Workshop. By the end, I was. If they get the game plan of Coil, the Little Sisu, play a Workshop, and then just spam items until they kind of win the game. I always found was quite tricky, but I could just maybe playing the deck pretty badly. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing I want to do is play like Daisy Piglet and then Lady and put in a small Kita, and then next turn you get to shift Kita and nobody can challenge you.
Yeah.
So what I was going to say about the Ruby Sapphire matchup that really kind of changed with this set is putting Piglet back in the deck. So now when you go Daisy, Smee, Lady, Piglet, your Smee doesn't get banished by Goofy anymore. And I think that's just a big deal.
It's mad that they've gone for like, I don't know what the counts are on Super Goofy is in that deck, but you know, you've got Penny, you've got, as you say, Piglet to stop the damage. You've got ways around, you know, not being removed from 2 damage, like Genies and Super Goofs don't always take things out. So it's just kind of interesting that they've lent into that being the answer. Where I find most players who know the matchup well just mega ramp, you know, to the B preps, the Sisus. If they miss the ramp, maybe they put a Maui on the board or whatever. But Super Goof never really feels the answer. It feels like, great, you're not ramping, I'll take that.
Yeah. Super Goof is a card that if you play into it, it'll just completely ruin your day. But if you set your deck up like, and you know, you think about your lines where, okay, yes, Piglet is a 3 quester, and then he goes for 3 and gets banished by, you know, he gets banished by Goofy. But if you play Smee on turn 2 instead of Piglet, and then you play Piglet on turn 3, well, now your 2-drop's going to go for 4 instead of just 3. You know, it's little things like that where, you know, and then they get to clear your Piglet on curve, whereas, you know, maybe, you know, the writing on the wall is your Smee is going for another 2, so that's 4 total, and then you have Piglet that's ready to go for 3 as well. Maybe they can't afford to wait a turn to play the Goofy to get rid of the Piglet. They have to play a really off tempo brawl, you know, and then you just kind of put them in this really bad spot. So. But yeah, like Dave was saying, like Piglet's always been really good against Ruby Sapphire, and not even just for like playing on turn 2 and then questing with him.
Yeah, and getting it to a 4x as well has like really brought. I mean, that with Lady and Penny. I mean, I think it was on one of your games, Dave, at the 10K. I think it's worth watching if anyone's out there. I don't know if the VODs are out, but it's like it took me a little bit of time, but you've got the 1-drop Rhino, you've got Penny, you know, you've got Smee taking his 1 damage. I guess I'll put that in there as well. There's actually so many little like active things that are happening, and I believe your opponent might have forgotten majority of all the interactions that were going on.
Well, so first my opponent quested a Smee when I had a Smee. with 2 damage on it. So Penny healed my Smee, gave it resist 1. My Smee took out their Smee, and then the following turn, their Cinderella they forgot about the resist that was still on the Smee, and Cinderella tried to come back and finish off. Tried to finish off the Smee that still had resist, and it didn't go. It didn't go very well. But we ranted about the Lorcana rules not allowing visual indicators for these triggers that are, you know, games are won and lost by whether or not you can remember the Rhino debuff or the Penny resist, and you can't indicate them in any way. That's that falls under the note taking.
I've seen in some
within
of
the
the
rule.
American events they'll have like, I think it was R&B has like a little token thing. Is that like actual events and not
They
legal?
they allowed that for the first couple DLCs over here, and then they said no.
Yeah,
And then
I've never seen that
they
here.
took the option away for that.
Mm.
But yeah, it's one of those things where, if it were it would these cards would be substantially worse if it only was on your turn, but that it persists through your opponent's turn. Like I could start my turn by snapping off a Rhino and then think for a couple minutes, and then and then play out my turn, and whatever, my turn takes 2 minutes, and then my opponent thinks through their lines. Like, you kind of have to remember this Rhino trigger for sometimes several minutes at a time.
Yeah, chuck a judge
And
call in there.
yeah, check a judge call in there, whatever, like. I don't know. And then it's challenging. It's like, oh, by the way, you forgot about that, sorry.
Yeah.
Put your card in the trash, please.
Yeah, I think as well the deck has even put Pete on top of there, and you tell your opponent, no, you can't do that damage, no, you can't play that action, and by that time
Right,
they
yeah.
get quite flustered. I think that the most fun one I had was in Lille with Tiana, and I was playing a French opponent, and they were trying to do all these things, and I had no cards in hand. I just had Tiana exerted on the board, and he top decked Colney World, slammed it down to sing it, and went, you can't because of Tiana. He just stormed off, just completely had enough.
Yeah.
And that's fair enough. Tiana wasn't played that much at that
Man.
point.
No, I wish Tiana was a playable card.
Oh
I
yeah.
really do.
Oh, and then we're gonna lose it to
Card is
rotation.
so much fun.
Yeah, the Las Vegas DLC was just the Wild West with P triggers. It's like
Yep.
there was no
Yeah.
penalty so like for playing, like if I played a Pete and you were Peated and you tried to play an action and I was like, judge, my opponent tried to play an action when it was Pete, and they're like, okay, don't do that. No warnings, no anything.
They're like, yeah, who cares?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like,
Yeah,
how many
like-
times is my opponent going to get to try to play through a Pete trigger in this event?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
It just kept going on.
They do need it
Yeah.
to be a bit more strict.
They could certainly clean up. They could certainly clean up the rules around triggers a bit.
Yeah,
and I hope they do.
bit, for sure.
I guess if you had indicators, do you think that takes away the skill a bit too much? If someone was playing a Pete token on the board, do you think that would? I mean, it just seems to add more confusion because there's some players who just won't get it.
I don't really like high level play being gate kept by memory, like memory issues. I think the no notes is actually very very exclusionary of people with like memory issues, because like some people just can't play like Ursula 2. Some people can't play Bare Necessities. I don't think the people who are the best at the game are should be the ones who are like best at remembering that what's been put into the inkwell. I think that's really really detrimental to some people who might be able to find like success otherwise, like if they could use memory aids but they can't. So they're just at a disadvantage for somebody who has just a better natural talent in that.
We've all played against that person. They play Ursula 2 against you. You show your hand, and you're like, no songs, and you're like, okay, thanks. Like they don't even look at the other.
Yeah.
They don't even look at the other cards.
It's when they play the
just like-
Diablo turn 1 and they say pass turn, and you go, do you not want to look at my hand? Yeah, oh, sure. And they do it for about a couple seconds, and they go, yeah, great.
Yeah,
And it's not like, oh,
great.
yeah, that's fair
Yeah.
enough.
And then they shift Diablo on their next turn right into your brawl.
Fire the
to
cannons.
Booby's point, The game's already so complicated, and there's like already so many skill intensive decisions
Mm.
to be made. I just wish remembering a thing that could be easily indicated with a simple
Yeah.
marker
Mm.
or a
Or
token on
You could
the
put
yeah,
card.
a
or just
coin
or
or
just I write,
yeah.
I just write minus 1 on my notepad and put it on their thing
Yeah,
that's rhinoed.
Yeah.
yeah,
I was for a while putting I had Pokemon coins and I'd put them on the thing that Alice gave award to, and that was just
Mm-hmm.
fundamentally through stress. I couldn't deal with it anymore. Of people either spending about 5 minutes and then they go and I play Zeus on Pluto and you go, no, you can't do
yeah.
that, it has ward, and I was just like, I can't, this can't be my life, I can't deal with this any longer.
Yeah.
So I ended up just
Yeah.
putting coins on it, but
So
only at smaller events.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I guess to answer your question, yes, I do think it adjusts the skill ceiling of the game a bit. But I think that's like kind of an artificial skill that doesn't belong in the game at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. I think we've been talking for almost an hour now, so I'm gonna wrap it up here. But it was really lovely to chat with you
Great.
guys. Is
Yeah,
there
it's great.
any shout
Thanks so
outs
much
at
for
all?
having us on.
Yeah, no, it was really good fun. It's always nice to chat with you guys, and I've got to get back to an American event soon. If there's any big
Yeah,
ones.
that would be great. Love to see you again.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But any shout outs at all? Anything you want to mention? Any content?
Yeah, I would love to shout out our friend Justin and his wife Taryn, who hosted me in their home for the weekend. Had a lovely time. It made traveling really easy. And then Rick and his wife Heather picked me up from the airport and brought me over there. So shout out to all of them.
Awesome.
Yeah, shout out to Justin too. The two of the rhinos I played in my deck were his. I still have them. I appreciate that. That was great. And Boomy and Lizard Kitty sleeved my deck for me at the event. That was cool. Shout out Primora and Sky for putting the Amber Steel Aggro deck together. Shout out just to the awesome Lorcana community that we're a part of. That so open with the flow of information and helps all of us get better every day.
Yeah, that's why it's
Yeah,
good. That's
and
why it's quite enjoyable to have these sort of chats where it's very candid, and I think there's a lot of information in there people can walk away with. But thank you very much, guys, and I'm gonna say
thanks for having us.
goodbye, everyone.